Okay, let's unpack this. If you're listening right now, you're probably already a pretty strong language user.
Mm-hmm.
You've put in the hours, right?
Yeah.
You can travel, you can handle meetings, you can watch shows without subtitles. Well, most of the time.
Most of the times.
Yeah.
But there's a problem. You've hit a wall. You've reached what's called the B2, or the strong intermediate plateau.
And it's one of the most frustrating places to be in language learning, precisely because you do feel competent.
You're functional.
You are. You can get by. But, there's this massive gap between getting by and achieving true advanced proficiency, that C1 or C2 level that universities and global employers actually recognize as mastery.
And that feeling of being stuck is so real. For months, maybe even years, you've been relying on passive exposure, thinking, oh, if I just keep listening to music and watching films, I'll get there eventually.
And now that's just not working anymore.
It's stopped.
That's the core of what we're talking about today. We are going to dive into the specific structural barriers that lock people into this intermediate level, and more importantly, give you a complete shift in strategy, a map to get out of that linguistic purgatory.
Great.
You need to stop relying on luck and exposure and start applying deliberate practice to intentionally bridge that gap to C1, C2 fluency.
So we're switching from just hoping to deliberate action. Let's find out how we get unstuck.
It's so crucial to start by just acknowledging that this feeling of stalled progress is completely normal.
Right. It's not just you.
It is not just you. Think of learning like climbing a cliff face. The beginning is steep, but, it's manageable. You see rapid progress.
Yeah, you feel like you're flying.
Exactly. But once you hit that intermediate level, it's like a sheer, smooth slab of rock. You feel like you're pulling just as hard, but you're not moving up at all.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
And that lack of visible progress, that frustration, is the #1 reason why so many advanced intermediate learners, people who have spent years studying, end up just walking away.
I think we all recognize that feeling, but what does the stalled state actually, what does it look like? What are the key symptoms of being stuck there?
Okay, so we can define it with 5 core characteristics. These are basically signs that you need to change your tactics.
Give us the checklist.
All right, #1, and this is the absolute biggest indicator, is the receptive-productive gap.
Okay.
Your receptive competence, what you hear and read, is excellent. You understand 90%, maybe more. But your productive competence, what you can speak and write, is just so far behind.
So you know the word when you see it.
You know it. But it just will not come out of your mouth when you need it most.
That is the classic internal struggle, right?
Yeah.
You have this almost native level understanding,
Yeah.
but your ability to generate complex, nuanced speech is still lagging.
Exactly. Which brings us to the second characteristic, this tension between fluency and complexity. So you're fluent. You can speak without major pauses or breakdowns. You get your idea across smoothly, but you do it by sacrificing complexity.
What do you mean?
You're relying on simple grammar, high-frequency verbs, basic communication tactics. You're always opting for the easiest way to say something, not the most accurate or sophisticated way.
So you sound fine, but you don't sound nuanced. You're hitting the targets, but only the low-hanging ones.
Precisely. And this links directly to point 3, limited vocabulary range. Research shows that strong intermediates often just plateau around the 3,000-word level.
Which is enough for basic conversation.
It is. But if you want to read, say, an unsimplified magazine article or tackle complex literature or handle a professional report, you need a functional vocabulary of 5,000 to 6,000 words. If you stopped actively looking for new terms, you're stuck.
And what about how we actually sound?
Well, that's the 4th characteristic, unnatural speech. Even if your language is perfectly accurate, grammatically correct, it can often sound, too formal, maybe a bit bookish. Stiff? Exactly. It lacks the correct rhythm, the cadence, the use of everyday idioms that native speakers use automatically.
I always think of someone who translates a formal business email into everyday speech. It just sounds off.
Yes. And finally, the ultimate language learning trap, fossilized errors.
Oh, this is tough.
It's the toughest. These are small, persistent errors in grammar or pronunciation that you make constantly. But because they're small, like forgetting the third persons or misusing a preposition, they don't actually break communication.
So no one corrects you.
The listener understands you, so they never correct you. And that lack of feedback allows the error to become permanently embedded or fossilized in your language system.
Wow, that's a brutal self-reinforcing cycle. Since the mistake doesn't disrupt the conversation, it persists forever. The very system that helped you get to B2 now actively prevents you from moving on. Okay, so if that receptive productive gap is the foundation of the problem, knowing the words but failing to use them, then just listening more is clearly not the answer.
No, not at all.
We need to look at two ideas that really flip the script.
We do. We have to move from passive exposure to intentional processing. And the first crucial concept here is the noticing hypothesis.
Noticing.
We've all been told just immerse yourself, but the harsh truth is 90% of what you hear is wasted unless you apply this rule of mandatory noticing.
Okay.
For a new language feature to move from the input you hear, the actual sound waves, into your learning system, what we call intake, you must consciously pay attention to it.
So if I listen to a new song 10 times, I might enjoy it, but I won't actually learn a new grammatical structure unless I treat it like a detective case and actively try to spot it.
That's a perfect way to put it. The actionable tip here isn't just to listen for the general plot. Take a text you already understand. Listen again, but this time, force your awareness onto specific features. If you're struggling with phrasal verbs, listen just for how that phrase is used and in what context. Try completing a closed version of the transcript where those target words are blanked out. You're forcing your brain to acknowledge the structure.
That's intentional processing.
Yeah.
So what's the other side of that coin? You said there were two.
The other side is forcing output. It's the output hypothesis, which demands what we call pushed output.
Pushed output.
This is where you intentionally force yourself to use complex language. When you struggle to produce a sentence, when you realize you don't know the right word or the correct tense, that struggle highlights the gaps in your knowledge. And that realization, that necessary effort, it forces your entire linguistic system to restructure itself to accommodate new, more sophisticated forms.
It's like the difference between passively reading a workout manual and actually trying to lift the weight. The manual is nice, but only the physical act shows you where you're weak.
A perfect analogy. So your output tasks should challenge you. Don't just talk generally. Try role plays that specifically require you to use complex language you just noticed. Use written sentence completion tasks. You have to feel the pressure to perform just slightly above your comfort zone.
And to combine both listening and production, especially for tackling that bookish sound we talked about, we have to talk about shadowing.
Shadowing is phenomenal because it's a form of active mimicry. The technique is so simple. Find a short piece of native audio, listen to a sentence, and immediately repeat it. Try to speak at the exact same time as the speaker.
So you're literally their auditory shadow.
You are. You're trying to match their rhythm, their tone, their speed, their pronunciation as closely as you possibly can.
And the benefit.
It's twofold. First, you're training your ear to process the rapid, often reduced sound of natural speech. And second, you're training your mouth and your muscle memory to reproduce that natural cadence. It's a key practice for adopting the music of the language.
So now we get to the actual goal of C1 and C2.
Yeah.
Complexity. We can be fluent, but if we don't sound sophisticated, we haven't reached that advanced level. And this requires a huge expansion of vocabulary, but it's not just about the number of words, is it?
Absolutely not. Moving from 3,000 words to that 6,000 word academic threshold demands a whole new approach. You need to read widely, especially about topics you are not comfortable with.
Right. Get out of your comfort zone.
Totally. If you only read sports blogs, you will only learn sports vocabulary. You have to seek out academic papers or technical magazines on architecture, anything that forces you to encounter a broader, less common range of words.
So we're expanding our range of topics to force the vocabulary acquisition.
Yes. But as you said, the real leap is in how you know a word. At the advanced level, knowing a word means mastering the entire system around it. For instance, you have to master polysemy,
Cheers.
the ability to distinguish between related meanings of the same word. Think of the word head. You have the head of a person, the head of an organization, the head of a nail.
Or like the difference between running a machine, running a business, and running a well.
Exactly. And you also need to master homonymy, which is distinguishing words that look identical but have totally unrelated meanings, like file the metal tool versus file the stack of papers.
It seems overwhelming. But out of all of these, what is the single most vital skill for sounding truly advanced and natural?
Hands down, it's mastering collocational competence.
Collocations.
These are the restrictions on how words are used together. For instance, in English, we catch a flight, we don't get a flight. We have a steep learning curve, not a sharp learning curve.
Right, and even if you substitute a synonym, if the collocation is wrong, the sentence just sounds clunky.
It sounds jarringly awkward. This is the difference between being grammatically correct and being naturally fluent.
So we have to stop learning single vocabulary items and start learning word partnerships. That's where natural speech really lives.
It is. Natural speech is built on multi-word chunks or conversational routines, these fixed expressions that native speakers deploy instantly. They're hard to predict, so you have to learn them as a whole unit.
Give us some examples, some of those powerful high-frequency chunks that advanced learners should be focusing on.
Well, think about those little six-word phrases that act as filler or structure in a conversation. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, or if you see what I mean.
Hmm.
Mastering these small functional phrases, it really marks you as a sophisticated user. They give you time to think while keeping the conversational flow smooth.
And in written language or formal speech, that sophistication is signaled by how we connect our ideas.
Yes, through discourse markers.
Yeah.
These are the signposts of advanced communication. Phrases like, conversely, moreover, in conclusion, on the one hand,
Right.
they aren't just fancy filler, they control the entire communication flow. They show the listener exactly how your ideas are linked or contrasted. The ability to use these smoothly is a clear C1 indicator.
All of this complex thought really requires us to stop relying on our native language as a crutch. We have to get out of translation mode.
You absolutely must. You have to train your brain to think directly in the target language. But start small. Just name simple objects around you right now. Phone, lamp, keyboard. Then progress to simple narration about your environment. The coffee is cooling down.
And once that gets easier, how do we push ourselves further away from translating in our heads?
Stop using bilingual dictionaries. Use an English-only learner's dictionary instead. When you look up a new word, the definition is provided using only simpler English terms. This reinforces the connections within the language rather than constantly rerouting your thought process back to your native tongue.
This sounds like a lot of deliberate work, which leads me to the hardest part, fossilization. I mean, why should I spend my time actively seeking out my own embedded mistakes? Isn't that discouraging, especially when I'm already pretty fluent?
That's a fair question, but fossilized errors are a ceiling. They will not disappear on their own because, paradoxically, they work well enough. If you want to move to C1 or C2, which demands near-native accuracy, you have to force yourself to notice the errors you currently overlook.
So how do we get that external feedback we need to break the habit?
The single most powerful strategy is to record your voice.
Oh, I hate doing that.
Everyone does. But every week, record yourself talking spontaneously about your daily life for, say, 3 to 5 minutes. Then listen back critically. What sounds jarring? What sounds slightly off? Your voice sounds different on a recording than it does inside your head. And that critical distance is crucial for detecting those ingrained issues.
That moment of self-realization is painful but necessary. Okay, so once we've identified the error, what's next?
You have to be your own psychotherapist.
Yep.
Analyze the source of the error. Don't just correct it. Figure out why you keep making it. For example, if you consistently misuse prepositions, are you directly translating the logic from your native language? If you understand the root cause, you can target the rule, not just the symptom.
And since these are repeated errors, just correcting them once isn't enough to overwrite that deep-seated memory.
Absolutely not. You need targeted review. If you work with a tutor or even a patient friend, ask them to keep a dedicated journal of your repeated mistakes. Then, dedicate short bursts, 5 minutes, 3 times a day to reviewing just those specific corrections. You need high-frequency, concentrated exposure to finally dislodge the fossilized error.
So bringing all these advanced strategies, noticing, pushing output complexity, error correction, into a sustainable routine, how do we stop this from feeling like a second job?
Consistency beats intensity. Every single time. Even 10 or 15 minutes of daily focused practice is more valuable than one intense 3-hour session a week.
Right.
Start by switching your environment. Put your phone, laptop, your calendar into English mode. This forces constant low-stakes interaction with the language.
So you're integrating it into the background of your life.
Exactly. And start that internal monologue we discussed. Narrate your life. As you're making breakfast, just narrate the action in English. I'm boiling water. Or the kettle is whistling. It keeps that English channel open in your brain.
And I highly recommend the nighttime habit. It's so easy.
It is. Before you fall asleep, spend 5 minutes just recapping your entire day in English in your head. What did you accomplish? Who did you talk to? Your brain is already winding down, making it a great time to reinforce those new patterns without any pressure.
And finally, to keep motivation high, maybe challenge yourself with a specific, achievable goal.
Yes, use the language as a vehicle for a new skill. Don't just read about cooking. Learn how to poach an egg or change a tire exclusively using English instructions and videos. This makes the language a tool you rely on, not just the subject you're studying. And track your progress. Revisit materials you read 6 months ago and see how much more you understand.
So the journey from B2 to C1, C2 is really a fundamental shift in strategy. You're moving from just passive exposure to enforcing active output, demanding that mandatory noticing of how the language works, and committing to deliberately acquiring complex vocabulary, especially those tricky collocations and natural conversational chunks.
Achieving this level is less about memorization and more about adopting the underlying logic and operating system of the language. You're constantly restructuring your mental linguistic architecture, and that requires patience and consistency. Focus on small gains, not impossible perfection. Just remember that every minute you spend actively engaging and noticing the details is helping your brain make that essential leap.
So as you go back out there, remember what truly separates an advanced speaker from a highly fluent intermediate one. It's not just big words. It's the mastery of those small, functional, fixed conversational routines that signal true belonging in the language. So ask yourself, what are the specific 6-word chunks you heard today? Those perfect little units of natural speech that you can start noticing, rehearsing, and using today to make your speech sound completely native. Go find them, integrate them, and make them your own.